Derek Adams of Time Out claimed that right up to an ending designed to crack the sternest critical poker face, this is gourmet popcorn of the highest order. Newsweek's David Anson raved that it makes up for its gaps in logic with its breezy tone and its technological razzle-dazzle. And Letterboxd user Nora shared that this is a heist ensemble film made specifically for me because 4 out of 5 members of the core heist team are random men who I have thirsted after within the past 2 years. And to be honest, I'm like a year away from suddenly having a David Strathairn moment, so let's not discount him. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of Sneakers.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to Ruined Childhoods, the podcast where 2 people that you may or may not already know talk about movies and their various potentials to be sequeled, prequeled, spun off, adapted into a Broadway musical, a FX limited series, what have you. Anyway.
Sure.
I'm Dan.
I'm John. How's it going?
Yeah. Hey. We're here. We're recording in the middle of the day, which is fun and weird.
It means that it's an opportunity for me to be drinking coffee while we're doing this, which is nice.
Hey, cheers to that. I am also drinking
cheers
coffee.
To that. Yeah. So I feel like I don't know, the energy of the film that we're going to be talking about, I feel like flows well with like the idea of being like, you know, alert. And caffeinated.
Yes,
I don't know. Less so, alcohol where it might slow
funny.
you down and keep you a little dull.
Some movies are more daytime movies and some movies are more nighttime movies. And while I don't know if Sneakers falls under either category, it's definitely, you have to be on your toes with this. Although, and I don't know, like, I'm sure we've got some other news and notes to talk about before we get into it.
I got some stuff.
To me, Sneakers is one of the most pleasant. I'm gonna just right away go own up to my bias here. I love this movie. I have loved it for 30 years. I didn't see it in the theater, but saw it many times after it was released on home video, and I had it in various forms. So, big fan of this movie. I've been waiting to talk about it for a long time. So
it's great. It's a lot of fun.
It's great. But anyway, there are other things going on, and certainly we want to address those before we jump into. And since our last episode was barefoot in the park, it's only appropriate because we're going from barefoot to sneakers. But John, go on.
That wasn't on purpose, but you know what? It works so well.
It was such a happy accident.
So. Yes, absolutely. So since the last time we recorded, there have been a few things that have come out in the news and in different, actor interviews that are relevant to things that we've talked about in the past. And I want to start off with a news bit. The Merriam-Webster word of the year is gaslighting.
Yes.
So very appropriately so. I think that they said that it was like the most looked up word or something like that, and certainly deserving of being a word of the year, and just like kind of incredible that it comes from this movie from the 40s. Well, 2 movies from the 40s.
Right. Yeah. And we covered that. Was that earlier this year that we covered?
It might have been earlier this year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and what a great movie. What a great movie. And it you know what? It has come up in conversation, just the term gaslighting, and in my work as a high school teacher, teaching about rhetorical appeals and kind of like the psychology of media.
Yeah.
And talking about like different ways to convince people of things, we brought up the idea of gaslighting and where does that fall, or is that like an entirely different category than the ones that we study anyway?
Well, it's also relevant to bring up because, I mean, this didn't just happen, but also recently with the death of Angela Lansbury, who appeared brilliantly so in Gaslight.
Film debut in Gaslight.
Yeah. So all of that is relevant. And while we're on the subject of celebrities who have passed,
no, it wasn't her film debut.
It was her second, maybe?
There were the two other ones she did first before that, right?
So it's her film debut.
I'm serious. I'm telling you, there's definitely those two. I'm sorry. I'm gaslighting. I'm doing a poor job of it. Or I could just say, no, that wasn't a movie.
Yeah.
You didn't see Gaslight. We didn't.
It is her film debut. So, yes, but also on the subject of celebrities who have passed, Kirstie Alley passed just a few days before recording this. Certainly a controversial figure just in terms of her personal politics, but nonetheless gave us some fantastic performances in Cheers and the Look Who's Talking movies. And,
definitely. Let's not discount her performance in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Right. Yes, her work on Star Trek. Mm-hmm.
But definitely like Cheers and the Look Who's Talking films, I would say those, like, yes, she did other movies, but those are the ones that really stand out. And she's so wonderful. And it's also like when we talk about, female leads carrying a movie, she carries the first Look Who's Talking. John Travolta is secondary to
absolutely
Kirstie Alley, and he's wonderful in it too. But
right.
Anyway, but yeah, and John, what's interesting whenever Kirstie Alley comes up, I do think of you.
Do you now? Is it because of a certain story of something that happened to me one time when I was out for a walk?
I think it's connected to that. It has to do with when I visited you once when you were living in Los Angeles and you took me.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead. Tell your story.
Okay. So, and if what you're about to say does not have anything to do with this.
No, I'm pretty sure your story leads to mine.
Okay. So, it's interesting to talk about because, where I live in Portland, there's actually a store that was openly and illegally selling magic mushrooms, and it just got shut down. But it was very openly yes, we are selling magic mushrooms, and there were lines around the block. It was kind of amazing. So this story has to do with mushrooms. And for anybody who likes to think of me as somebody who's, so pure and hasn't, done any illegal things or anything questionable, I have some news for you. Things happen when when you're in your 20s living in Los Angeles. They just do. So I was with a friend, and they had some mushrooms that, we didn't have anything going on that day. It's a beautiful day in Los Angeles, and we're thinking, you know what? Let's take these mushrooms. And so we have them, and, didn't really feel any effects of anything. And after a certain point, we decided we could either cut our losses and just call it a day and not expect anything more, or we can double down and try to track down some more. So we went with that option because we were in our 20s living in Los Angeles. It was a beautiful day. So we managed to track down some more. We had them in a tea form. And then we were just like, all right, who knows what's going to happen? Let's check it out. Let's go for a walk. And so we were out for a walk, and there were just a series of very odd things that happened. we found this tree that had this very strange fruit that we had never seen on it before. And it led us to question, did we find a tree with a fruit that we've just never seen before, or are we tripping right now? And we weren't quite sure. So we continued on our journey, and we ended up at a very famous Los Angeles landmark in the Los Feliz Hills, which is, I'm sure that it has some sort of clever name, but it's known as like a murder house, where this dentist on Christmas Eve was trying to murder his family and killed all but his one daughter, who got away. And the whole thing was that, the house has been abandoned, and you can still see like the Christmas presents through the window. Very creepy. I'm sure that if you looked it up, you could find a lot more on it than that. And we were just like, what is going on? And this was also, I remember my friend was the first person I knew who had an iPhone. This was when the first iPhone came out, so 2007. Yeah. And she was trying to look up information about it while we were there, but we were like up in the hills. There was very bad reception, and also it was like very slow phone situation. Yes, Dan? I'm getting to the Kirstie Alley bit.
What? No. My question is just, is that the house that the first season of American Horror Story is based on?
Never seen it.
Okay. I might look this up. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's when we're just like, is this crazy because we're tripping, or is this crazy because it's crazy? Who knows? Let's continue on our walk. And then we come across this house, it's behind this like wrought iron gate. And there is this enormous cage in the front yard. And we're looking at it and we're thinking like, what is this? Until we see that there are a number of actual lemurs swinging around in there. And, we're just like, what is going on? This is somebody's private residence. This is somebody's house. And there are these lemurs here. And so on my friend's first generation iPhone, we look up like lemurs, Los Feliz, whatever we had to look up. And we discovered that it was none other than Kirstie Alley's house. So we learned a lot that day, but ultimately came to the conclusion that the things that we encountered were weird just because they were weird and not because we were tripping. The effects of the mushrooms, we believe, did not actually set in.
I lost you there. You froze, and I cannot hear you. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, you are unfrozen, and I can now hear you, and I can see you. So anyway, I'm looking up the Los Feliz murder, or Feliz. I forget. I've never pronounced it right. The murder mansion.
It's a running debate.
Yes. When I mispronounce it, I am not choosing a side in that debate. I'm just pronouncing it. Yeah. So no mention here of the American Horror Story, but yeah, there's definitely, you Google that, you get a lot of results.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's so much to say, try shrooms, but maybe if they're old, or I don't know, like there's some cases in which maybe they're not going to work out for you.
Yeah. Anyway, I've been there, done that, Hey. when you're buying from your like 20-year-old cousin, it's yeah. Anyway, 20s are a wonderful time.
Yeah. So I've got a couple other. What's up?
I was going to bring. I had a question for you.
Yes.
So we both recently saw a movie that fits into our genre really, really well. When we talk about when we talk about movies from the 90s, 80s, 70s, and say, is there a sequel in this? Could you do a sequel? And the question of how do you make a sequel to Top Gun was answered. Top Gun Maverick. You and I both saw it for the first time recently.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I thought it was a lot of fun. I enjoy it more than I enjoyed the original. I do not enjoy the original Top Gun. Like, that's
Okay.
it. I'm just not. Whatever. It's fine. It's not. I'm not. It's not like It's not like other movies where I'm like, it's terrible. I've never been. I've tried with the original anyway. I thought that Top Gun Maverick was a lot of fun. And I'm like, oh yeah, this has got to be a lot of fun to see in the theater, in IMAX. And Joseph Kosinski was the right person for the job. And I'm sure I've seen other I know the only other Joseph Kosinski film that I know I've seen was Tron Legacy.
Okay.
This guy he's maybe the best filmmaker for like IMAX spectacle movies, because Tron
also what, 30 years later sequels?
Well, yes. So the 30-year later sequel, because and we saw that at the huge Lincoln Center IMAX Tron Legacy, and it was you talk about mushrooms, you didn't need shit to feel like you were tripping watching this. Laser cycles and everything. It was amazing. I can't watch it ever again because I'm no experience watching it is going to replicate that. So I feel like seeing Top Gun, watching Top Gun and watching it at home, I thought it was fun. I thought the story was well told. I love I love that Maverick and Iceman text. It's so cute. I thought that they did a nice job, including Val Kilmer. I thought that they did a nice job of honoring the original, but in general it was a more fun movie, and it did have more stakes than I kind of anticipated it having.
Well, yeah. Okay. Here's my take. Although, okay. It was fun to watch. I appreciate that they actually were filming inside of cockpits instead of just relying on, CG and rigs and stuff like that. And I mean, I know that the actors themselves had to press the button to start rolling on the cameras. They actually had to do that. They actually barfed in the cockpits and stuff like that. And so I appreciate the level of commitment to telling that story. However, I didn't love Val Kilmer in it. I felt like it felt a little cheap to me.
Exploitative?
Yes, I love Val Kilmer, and I feel like had he continued on his path as an actor and not fallen ill and, encountered some really kind of awful situations with his health, he wouldn't have been in it. I don't think they would have put him in it. He kind of went off the rails for a little bit and was doing his own thing and had become an artist. And I just don't think that that's the Val Kilmer that they would have put into a sequel. I think it largely had to do with his declining health. And that's just my feeling. There's no way of knowing if that's necessarily the truth, but it's just the feeling that I got. I thought that John Hamm was great in it. I thought that he was a perfect,
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know.
I totally forgot about, but John Hamm was great. Yeah. I mean, look, was it a story that had to be told? No.
You know what? And I will say John Hamm was a perfect new version of Tom Skerritt. Tom Skerritt, also of Cheers.
Right. Yes.
So just to bring it back, but I actually do like the original more. I'm not a huge fan of the original Top Gun. However, I really felt like the competition between Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer felt more authentic. I I feel like they were trying to recreate that this time around. The love story with Jennifer Connelly in the new one, I felt like just didn't sit right with me.
You felt forced.
No, I love Jennifer Connelly. I think she's
Yeah.
great.
Oh,
but
yeah. Jennifer Connelly herself is great, but that whole story, it felt forced. I totally agree with everything you're saying. So it was named Best Picture by the National Board of Review, which, take it for what it is.
But for them, I mean, was it in consideration against things that maybe haven't come out yet, or like when did that happen? Because
like yesterday,
I don't know. Like I just feel like I don't know, National Board of Review. I just don't know if I necessarily feel like that's the look on that is necessarily for cinematic quality.
No, I think it is more of a, I don't know, populist, if you will. Kind of like, it's like kind of the like the MTV Movie Awards, but
we've had some amazing movies come out this past year, and
yes.
I really feel like there are so many that, like even a great year for documentaries, a great year for animation. I'd say that, I haven't seen a lot of the kind of newer stuff that's just starting to come out, but
right.
Hard to say how those are going to stack up. I may be biased because it was created out here in Portland, and also my place of business, the Portland Art Museum, is doing an exhibition on it this summer, but Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio
knew you were going there.
Dan, it's out on Netflix the day that we're recording this today.
Oh,
so,
it is?
Yes.
Oh,
so,
fabulous.
You must watch it. It is exquisite. It is gorgeous. It is absolutely stunning. So I highly recommend that. And honestly, it's like what they do with Top Gun Maverick in the production and keeping things authentic. It's more of like a, if you know kind of a thing. Like if you know that the lengths they went to create this, then yeah, that's good that they did it that way. But if you don't know, you would have probably been fine with it being CG. And,
right.
And I think that's, it's an admirable idea to kind of go back to more traditional ways of filmmaking while still making something that feels current and very relevant. But when you look at something like stop motion animation and you say like, you know what? Yeah, this story could not be told any other way. Mm-hmm. And it benefits so greatly from being done this way. And knowing that it's like 10 years in the making and so much thought and time went into this. And I think that goes a much longer way than trying to just be true to maybe a more traditional style of filmmaking. But that's one person's opinion.
Also it's like it as fun as it was to watch, it wasn't like Top Gun Maverick was doing something new.
No, it was doing something old, but it was feeling
the
fresh.
Presentation was, it was about the presentation. Anyway, like, I don't know. We don't need to get, like, look, National Board of Review also named Green Book Best Picture, which, yeah exactly.
Well, hey, Dan, so I want to get to sneakers, but I want to just cover two other things really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
So in an interview with Antonio Banderas, and I feel like this was a baited question, but he was asked who he would want to see play a new Zorro.
Yeah.
And he had recommended Tom Holland, which is funny because it's an English actor, but I guess that's kind of like Anthony Hopkins was Welsh, as Zorro in a way. And he said that he would want it to be done in a similar way where he's kind of passing the sword or
where Antonio Banderas.
Yeah.
So it would exist in the universe of the legend, the Mask of Zorro. The Legend of Zorro.
Yeah, exactly.
And Catherine Zeta-Jones, I imagine.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, who's back on the screen, the small screen. Yeah, Wednesday.
Talked about her. Did we talk about her on the?
Well, you said that you were starting to watch it. I hadn't watched it yet, but we talked off mic
Off
about
mic, yes.
how much we enjoyed Wednesday.
Yeah,
and it was
finished
it was a really fitting way to bring back the Addams Family in a way that feels like it's something different. It's not just trying to do the same thing again. And
Right. And I know this is fodder for a future episode, so
yeah. But we've talked about it before.
yeah,
a little bit,
yes. But I totally recommend it. If you, I mean, like, you don't have to be a fan of the Addams Family, but it certainly helps. And
it's fun as hell. Spooky, creepy, kooky.
I prefer spooky.
And yeah, and Dan, I've got one more bit of information that's come out recently that's
Nice.
going to bring us into our discussion about sneakers. But
Perfect.
Allegedly, Robert Redford and Paul Newman's roles in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were supposed to be reversed, but because Robert Redford was so new to the scene, they didn't want to have this newbie have kind of like top billing, the main character.
Oh yeah.
So they swapped them.
Yeah, I feel like I've read that somewhere.
It was in an interview, and it was reported as if it was new news.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's in the IMDb trivia for the.
Well,
So
anyway,
I don't know.
So thus leads us into our next Robert Redford centric movie,
Yes.
1992's Sneakers.
You mean Fort Red Border? I will always, because of this movie, think of Robert Redford as Fort Red Border.
That's really funny. So that's what it's in the opening credits when
Yes.
it's like decoding his name.
Oh,
That's really funny.
yeah, it's great, and they do. I'm pretty sure they like did that in the trailer. I haven't watched it recently, but like I remember this movie having a pretty cool trailer.
Well, I'll tell you what this movie has is a pretty cool cast and a pretty cool plot, and pretty much a pretty cool everything else. Do you want me to synopsize?
Well, okay, so before you synopsize, let's put it in context here, because I was thinking about like when Sneakers was released, because this is you got Robert Redford and Sidney Poitier, you've got River Phoenix in there. So like you've got a pretty sizable cast here. You've got Phil Alden Robinson, whose last film before this was Field of Dreams. So and this movie gets released on September 11th. Pure coincidence there. I'm not calling this a conspiracy. In 1992, and September 1990. I feel like September has traditionally been like, back in the days of more traditional cinema releases, September is kind of the between ground of like, well, it wasn't quite our summer movie. Like in August, that's when we begin dropping the, your less high profile summer movies. August 92 was like Raising Cain and Unforgiven, Digstown, Single White Female, Stay Tuned, a favorite of ours, and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, also that year. Then in September movies are usually, kind of mostly forgettable. Not in 1992, when you've got Sneakers coming out on the 11th there. On the 18th, you have both singles, and it's for S movies. It is a year for S movies. You've got Singles and School Ties.
Wow, so it's also S titles that are plural.
S titles that are plural. And we're going to round that month out with, and I'm only saying this because right now it's the adaptation is on Broadway, Mr. Saturday Night. Ooh. And Michael Mann's The Last of the Mohicans, which is another one of my favorite movies. And that comes out September 25th that year. So September 1992 is an awesome month for movies.
Yeah, I mean, banger after banger right there.
Seriously. Captain Ron comes out in there.
So Dan, I know that we like to sometimes talk about when when we first saw particular movies. And I do have a funny thing to mention about this one, and it's actually about how I failed to see Sneakers for the first time, because I guess in the later 90s, in my mind, it was called Sleepers. And so I saw that Sleepers was going to be on like HBO or something. And boy, oh boy, was I like, this isn't fun. This is not the romp I was expecting.
Yeah.
Another S plural title, but that's from 96.
Right.
And very different. Very, very different.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, that one could have easily been called Sneakers as well. But no.
Yes. Also another stat cast.
Sleepers is, that's an intense movie. I read the book because I worked with someone once who I was like, well, I've seen the movie, and they're like, oh, you got to read the book because it's like true story and it's even more out there. So yes, highly, highly recommend it. But Sleepers is one of those movies where it's like, I've seen it once. Thanks. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm done. Sneakers, on the other hand, is
highly rewatchable.
So rewatchable.
So let me synopsize for you.
Please.
Martin Bishop and his ragtag team of questionable outcasts are some of the finest security experts in San Francisco. If you're concerned that your business has a security flaw, Bishop and his crew will find it. But things get turned on their side when Martin is approached by two NSA agents asking for his help recovering a black box allegedly being developed for the Russian government that can hack into any secure server and take over anything from traffic lights to the Federal Reserve. The NSA blackmails Martin in order to take the job, which he is able to do with little effort. But when Martin arrives at the exchange, a member of his team finds out that the scientist who developed the box had been killed the night prior. Seeing that something is amiss, Martin takes off just before he could get gunned down by the people he thought were the NSA. Knowing that they have the box, Martin and his team try to find a way to recover it in order to prevent something catastrophic. As it turns out, the man behind the mischief is Martin's old friend Cosmo, who was arrested for hacking while Martin got away. While in prison, Cosmo made friends with organized criminals and they developed a plan to collapse the world economy. Martin, his team, and his old flame Liz hatch a plan to sneak into Cosmo's office to steal the box back and release it to the actual NSA. And Dan mentioned some of the cast. I'm going to kind of go through the whole roster. So Robert Redford is Martin Bishop. And then also on his team is Sidney Poitier as Donald Crease. We have David Strathairn as Whistler, Dan Aykroyd as Mother, Darren Roscoe, but called the Mother. River Phoenix is Carl. And then we add Mary McDonnell as Liz. Ben Kingsley plays Cosmo. We have Stephen Tobolowsky as a foil, the kind of the mark in their attempts to steal it back. Timothy Busfield and Eddie Jones are the faux NSA agents. Timothy Busfield, also of Field of Dreams. You mentioned that before. Mm-hmm. And then we have Donald Logue as Dr. Gunther Janek, who is the developer of this decoding technology. And James Earl Jones is there as the actual NSA agent. So it's what a cast.
Such a great cast.
And also Sidney Poitier just like kicking ass.
Sidney Poitier is fucking awesome in this. Before we dig in, sorry, just to I wanted to come back because it occurred to me. I was like, wait a second, didn't Robert Redford also direct a movie that came out like a week after Sneakers? And no, a month after Sneakers, A River Runs Through It comes out. So
okay,
yeah, man, Fort Red Border kicking ass.
Fort Red Border.
Sidney Poitier is great. Sidney Poitier, like the chemistry between them all is so much fun. Like,
Dan, I just remembered something.
Yeah?
Dan Aykroyd was in my dream last night.
Wait, what? Was he
Breaking
shilling
news.
his vodka? What was he doing?
So, okay. Keep in mind, this is a dream, so details can shift and get really weird very suddenly. What?
No. I'm going to wait till the end. I'm going to wait till the end.
So, what was happening was, I think that it was inside of our old high school. This wasn't like one of those I'm back in high school movies, but like there was like something that was being filmed in our old high school, and what are you laughing about?
No, because Val Kilmer, who we were just talking about, and you just made me think of that Top Secret, that dream he has in Top Secret where he's back in high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, classic. Okay, so something was being filmed in the school, and I was somehow part of it, but like on the outskirts of things. It wasn't Pete and Pete.
No. Okay.
Which was filmed in our hometown. So it was something was being filmed there. And Dan Aykroyd was coming in. I don't know if he was a producer or was acting in it. And I don't know. Maybe I was there to like greet him or something and like kind of welcome him in and everything. And he gets kind of settled. And I started talking to him about Vigo the Carpathian, Ghostbusters 2. Dan, like as I'm remembering this as I'm saying it. Well, no. But I made some sort of comment about I couldn't remember the actor's name who actually played Vigo, but I was referencing the performance of that character, and like I guess
Craig T. Nelson, right?
Yeah, right. And I don't know. There was something that happened where I was like praising this actor who played Vigo the Carpathian to Dan Aykroyd, who clearly didn't give a shit. And so, and then when I realized like, oh, Dan Aykroyd doesn't give a shit, I like kind of saw my way out. And then I couldn't find my car, but then my car key, which was for a Volkswagen, which I don't drive, was actually opening up somebody else's car who I work with, and I was like, "Oh, that's a crazy car." And then I was going, and anyway, it kind of went into this whole thing.
But wait,
that's didn't
we have like a family like Jetta when you were in high school?
Yeah, at one point, but it was like that's irrelevant. I was looking for my current car.
All right,
is the point.
Okay.
So anyway,
sure,
it was a whole thing. Dan Aykroyd was there, and I definitely was not welcomed in that conversation. It does make me wonder, though, like if I did run into Dan Aykroyd, what would I want to talk to him about? Because there are so many amazing things, and I feel like I'd want to talk about Nothing But Trouble, but I'd be embarrassed to, and I wouldn't want to like hurt his feelings and make him think that I was making fun of him. I don't know.
No, I would, but John, like we did an episode about Nothing But Trouble where I think like, we kind of gave it, it's just, just desserts. I don't know if that's the
I think so. Yeah.
Here. But, which by the way, I saw that, I think, was it like Shout Factory released a Blu-ray of Nothing But like a collector's edition?
No way.
Of Nothing But Trouble. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Would you ask him about Ghostbusters? And
see, that's the thing is I'm sure he gets asked about Ghostbusters all the time. I don't ask him about Ghostbusters.
Good point.
What am I going to ask him about Ghostbusters that isn't available anywhere else?
Okay. Yeah. No, I would ask him about like the couch trip or something maybe.
Well, also what's interesting about Dan Aykroyd is that he's in Sneakers in a role that's, not primary, not even secondary. He's probably number 8 on the call sheet.
But he's on the team.
He's on the team, absolutely. But I feel like David Strathairn is higher ranking than he is. I feel like on the team, he probably gets the least amount of screen time.
But I feel like this was one of those, like Dan Aykroyd was really great in this period. And we've talked about Driving Miss Daisy, at doing a few projects every now and again that were like kind of like more prestigious than, let's say a Nothing But Trouble.
Sure. Yeah.
So I feel like this was, and I mean, I don't know. I suppose I could probably do some deep digging and find out, how exactly he got into this ensemble.
You know what, Dan? I have a theory.
Go ahead.
Nothing But Trouble came out 1991.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if somehow like he made Nothing But Trouble and like, which was such a catastrophic, production and everything, that I'm wondering if he was just like, I'm going to have to kiss some asses for a little bit and, maybe eat shit and like take some maybe smaller roles and like rebuild my brand.
I mean, I don't think being in Sneakers is eating any shit. I mean,
no, but he's not starring in it is what I'm saying. Like Nothing But Trouble was like a huge vanity project for him.
Right. Nothing But Trouble was, but if you look at most,
Well, I guess the next year was Coneheads, 93.
yeah.
So back to number 1 on the call sheet.
Right. But even I would say there are very few times where Aykroyd is number 1 on the call sheet. Like maybe Dragnet. But even Ghostbusters, Aykroyd's not number 1 on the call sheet. I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number 2.
Yeah. Anyway,
even like something like, I don't know, Couch Trip, which I don't know why I keep coming back to that. I've never even seen it. Mathow. But anyway, yeah. Back to Sneakers, amazing ensemble. Mary McDonnell, who had just kind of like broken out in
you know what, Dan? Blues Brothers 2000.
What? Oh, yeah, in Blues Brothers 2000. Yes. Oh, you getting that weird feedback?
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, I think that was I think I had my phone too close to it. Anyway, so yeah.
Blues Brothers 2000.
Blues Brothers 2000. Okay. Fantastic. I'm sure there were days where he wasn't even number 1, like when Clapton was on set or whatever.
Right.
The only part of that movie worth watching is like this huge blues like jam session at the end. I watched it once. And yeah, so anyway, but Aykroyd, you know, he would do these, you know, like the man was nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah.
Not too long before this. But yeah, so Sneakers is a great movie, and
yeah, Sneakers is really fun. I think that I really enjoy, I guess, more lighthearted espionage movies. Although I love like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, but anything that involves like code cracking and major plots to collapse the world economy and something like I don't know. The tone of this movie is right on. And I don't know, I'm drawn to that kind of thing. This is kind of a perfect movie for somebody like me. And
yes.
Yeah. And also there's like just watching this cast kind of doing like something really enjoyable. Mary McDonnell is really fun. Stephen Tobolowsky's character is so much fun. His voice is his passport. Yeah. I love that. And so I don't know. I feel like there's a lot to enjoy about this. It totally holds up. There's nothing about it that's, you know, questionable after all this time. I mean, hey, this is 30 years later. We are just right after its 30th anniversary. So yeah, there we go. And I don't know.
But everything about it. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, Ben Kingsley wasn't maybe my favorite. I don't know. There's something about his performance that and maybe it has to do with just, you know, his little ponytail nub, or I don't know. There's just something about it that I was just
his early 90s music producer.
Yeah. You're talking
Sharp
about
of Sharp Records.
Oh, you're talking Frank Sharp of Sharp Records. I'm thinking of oh my God. Why am I totally blanking? Michael McKean in Airheads, where he's the station manager. Which, by the way, Variety they had like they filmed a little conversation between Brendan Fraser and Adam Sandler, and it was the most I've ever liked Adam Sandler, because it's him and Brendan Fraser just like interviewing each other essentially, and they're talking a lot about the amazing time they had together on Airheads, and just like being really open and honest with each other about their careers and the ups and downs and everything. And it's honestly the time where I've really felt like I've seen like who Adam Sandler is as a person. Yeah. And the way that he and Brendan Fraser talk to each other is just like really, really sweet. And talking about this bananas movie that like I happen to love, it's so good. And to know that they think about it with fondness. Yeah,
I was thinking about it yesterday as you know, the Brendan Fraser, the Brennaissance is happening.
Yeah.
You know, Airheads has been largely left out of the conversation, and undeservedly
wrongfully so. I mean, talked about another stacked cast. That movie is just like it's brilliant. And we will talk about that.
We'll talk about Airheads another time. But Sneakers, yeah. So Sneakers and the setup of it, I mean, I feel like it's relevant again because you imagine in the beginning, when they're taking the money from the Republican National Convention, and transferring it over to, I don't know, the NAACP,
right, yeah,
or whatever. It's like you imagine doing that, taking from the Ted Cruz's reelection campaign and transferring the money to Black Lives Matter.
The jokes still work. The jokes absolutely still work. It's not like you're watching an episode of Golden Girls and Dorothy references some borscht belt comedian or something, and the crowd goes, the canned laughter goes wild. And meanwhile, today we're just like, I'll have to imagine that was something funny
Rose,
back then.
Marty Feldman.
Yeah. I don't know. The jokes are still relevant.
And
I don't know if they knew at the time, this is always going to be funny, so let's do this.
And it's interesting because it's about technology, and technology has changed so much in 30 years, but this movie seems to have kind of the through line. It seems like, even though, some of the tech that you see in the movie is very early 90s looking, the ideas are still current and relevant. So
absolutely,
I think it's one of the, who knows if there was a lot of foresight. I mean, it was co-written by Lawrence Lasker and Walter Parks, who wrote War Games.
Right. And I think it was just on Wikipedia that the idea for this was conceived during the production of War Games.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense.
That sounds right. Yeah. You could see this as kind of like a spiritual sequel to War Games.
Sure, they exist in the same universe. That kind of thing.
Oh boy, interesting. Yeah. So many ideas are floating around right now.
Well, and that leads me to ask you the question, Dan. 30 years later, what would we do with Sneakers?
Well, and to lead into that answer, I will add that there was a series in the works about 6-7 years ago.
2016, yeah.
Yeah, 2016. And I think that a series, I think that yes, it would work, but it would also just diminish it, and it would take it down to just be another procedural. And yes, it fits very well into that mold of the procedural and everyone on the team and of course, of course, you would have it much more diversified now, and you'd have room for more than one woman on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that representation wise, what's interesting about the film itself, I mean, just by putting Sidney Poitier in something doesn't mean that it makes it diverse fully,
right.
But also having a blind character not played by a blind actor, I think, is a ding, but also for 1992, that's not that bad.
Right.
And it's not like it's really played only for comedy. It's played for relevance.
This is not Leslie Nielsen doing Mr. Magoo.
No, it actually, supports the character's motives and gives the character, strengths.
Well, yeah, there's that wonderful scene where they're listening to the recording over and over again, and I forget what it was that they were listening to, and they're all like, yeah, no, there's nothing, we can't figure this out, and he's like, you're not hearing what yeah.
Well, there's also the part where he's asking, because Robert Redford was in the trunk of a car and trying to figure out where they were going, and then he was just like, did you go over any bridges? Was there a tire bump pattern? And they was recreating it, and then
the cocktail party.
Oh my god, it's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, and he even has that line. He goes, "Remind me to make you an honorary blind person."
Yeah.
So naturally, if you were going to do it today, but that's not my idea. I don't want to see a series because I don't want to see this just reduced to being whatever. There was that series on I think Showtime with Timothy Hutton, and then there's a TNT version, and there's all these others, and it's just all of these, like, who's on the team, like Criminal Minds is one. My wife watches that, and you know, and it's yes, and this is the serious one, and this is the funny one, and this is the computer whiz, and this is the like, oh yes, they're there for the exposition because they're the computer whiz, and there's a hey, go, like, tell me what you have, Garcia, tell me what you have on, like, you know, this on this person, and they'll be like, oh well, interesting, here's the deal, and like, oh, here's all the information the viewer needs to know. I don't want sneakers to be diminished to that. So honestly, I would like to just see I feel like I was going to say remake, but when I think about a remake of this, it makes me think about all the movies that have come after it that did what it would be doing as a remake, from Mission Impossible to Ocean's 11 to Ocean's 8.
Hey, Dan, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, we're recording this remotely. Dan is in Seattle. I'm in Portland. Dan, are you just casually wearing a tuxedo T-shirt?
So
that's a yes. That's a yes. No explanation needed.
No,
Dan,
I'm not.
No explanation needed.
I'm not just. I volunteered at my.
I don't think
daughter...
that you should give any explanation.
No. Okay, so I'm wearing a tuxedo T-shirt. All right,
casually.
Here. I'll post it. I'll take a picture. I will post it on our Instagram. Okay.
Okay. So that silence is us just taking pictures. Okay.
I'm taking pictures with the tuxedo T-shirt. Okay. There we go. I'm gonna post that shit. So anyway, so I was thinking about the remake idea, and again, it then comes down to, like, well, Sneakers becomes another, like, the Flatliners remake, and just like another, like, cookie cutter. Oh, this again. So, I think that what I would like to see Sneakers revived as is a type of competition, like game show, type thing. And it basically, I think it comes down to, like, you know, an escape room type deal, and where you have your team, and your team has to you know, solve I mean, it basically would be an escape room competition.
Yeah, or, I mean, it doesn't need to be televised. It could just be an escape room.
Right, and it could be, a Sneakers-themed escape room.
Yeah.
Cosmo,
or, you know,
has locked you in.
Yeah, there could be, like, a virtual reality experience for it. There's things that, certainly that you could do there.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like something like that, but also I think that, like, you know, watching those, and maybe it's just because, like, my daughter watches all of these, like, baking shows and competition shows, and I'm like, oh well, that's kind of fun. And I don't know that I've seen one where it's like two teams in two different, like, escape rooms, and just, like, breaking codes. So it wouldn't even really be Sneakers related, but somewhere deep down, the inspiration is based in Sneakers. So,
well, I mean, I will say, like, you know, I don't know if you would necessarily say Sneakers specific, but, you know, there's a large element of nostalgia for the 90s, and there has been for a long time. And I feel like even just setting something in, like, the early 90s and using, like, early 90s computers.
You're limited to the early 90s technology. Yeah. Well, you do have to turn in your phones when you do an escape room. Have you ever done an escape room, John?
I've done one escape room, and I believe that it was, like, Sherlock Holmes themed, which is so obvious. And I was with a group of lawyers who are very, like, type A and trying to do everything very much just, like, by the book. And I'm just like, the antler on that, like, you know,
you were the whistler of the group
looks kind of weird. What if I turn that? And then, like, you know, it just kind of lets you skip, like, 20 steps.
Yeah. We did an escape room in Belgium. So my wife is from Belgium, from Ghent, Belgium. And we did an escape room there. And we got out with, like, 30 seconds left on the clock. It was a real nail biter. It was Cold War themed, and it was basically like the Soviets were planning on releasing
the song "Wind of Change" by Scorpions.
Yeah, it played throughout on loop for the entire, like, hour.
Okay.
No, sorry. I don't know if that's. Oh, yeah, it is the right song.
Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like just movie themed escape rooms would be fun, not just sneakers, but sneakers would be a great like jumping off point for it. And assemble your team. Who's your crease? Who's your whistler? Who's your mother?
Who's your mother?
Who's your mother? Who's your Darren Roscoe? Who's your River Phoenix? I forget what his character name is.
Carl.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, also it's like, think about how cool this is because you've got like, you've got, Poitier and Redford, these icons from the 60s. And then you've got River Phoenix, who, I mean, at that point, it was like, this guy is, like there is no limit for where this guy is going to go. Unfortunately, tragic. Yeah. But like you've got him. It's interesting because it reminds me of it. It actually makes me connect that back to A River Runs Through It, which is Brad Pitt, not his first movie, but his real breakout role. And like Brad Pitt was really seen as like a young Robert Redford, and Redford taking him under his wing. Anyway, back to Sneakers. I think it would be fun as an experience or as like a competition to watch. What do you think?
You know what Brad Pitt was really good in? Sleepers.
Brad Pitt was really good. Yes. Yes.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring up Sleepers again, and you gave me an in. Sorry,
yeah, because I don't know that we'll ever cover Sleepers on here.
No,
honestly.
we won't.
No,
we won't. Sorry, what were you saying?
It's excellent if you ever play the Kevin Bacon game, though. Sleepers is worth at least knowing the cast of.
Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like a Rosetta Stone.
Yeah.
Okay, so John, what's your idea? What are you going to do?
So I will start by letting you know that I was talking to some people and I was explaining what this podcast does. And a lot of times when I say that what we do is we theorize how we could bring back movies, I always try to include things that aren't standard, such as like a sequel or a prequel or a reboot or remake or whatever. I always try to throw in some things where it's like, it could be this or it could be that. And one of the things that I like to say is ice cream flavor. And when asked what our latest movie was, I said Sneakers. And when they asked me, what ice cream flavor would you do for Sneakers? I was like, well, let's see. There's My Voice is My Pistachio. And then I was like, oh, duh, of course it's Sneaker-Doodle Swirl. So anyway, that's not what I'm going with. But
not Fort Red Velvet?
No, nope. Sneaker-Doodle was definitely the obvious choice. But anyway, I was thinking, and you and I think we're thinking along the same lines, where it's like there's so much that can be done with this movie for real life opportunities and experiences, and decoding things and anagrams and that kind of a thing. I felt like similarly to where you were going with it, I was thinking more of like a tabletop Dungeons and Dragons style game. I know I've kind of gone down that well before, but I felt like for something like this, it'd be really interesting because, or like just like a board game. But I think that, what's up?
It reminds me of one of those old like VHS games.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Where it's like, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of a thing where it's like, oh, this happens. So you need to figure out a way, like in order to get past this, you have to unscramble this thing that gives you the code to get into this thing and whatever. And so it just kind of lends itself to that type of thing. I mean, there's that incredible scene where they're playing Scrabble and he's kind of using the tiles to kind of realize what this one thing actually is supposed to be. And yeah. I think that before I got to Sneaker-Doodle Swirl, it was too many Snickerdoodles.
Oh, too many.
Yeah.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah. So
too many secrets.
Yeah, too many secrets. So yeah, I think that there's just, and I think that we've talked about this before, but it would be so cool for an independent board game company to do a series of board games based on, movies from like the 80s and 90s that are, dare I say, sleeper hits. This is what happens when we record in the middle of a day.
Oh yeah, no, we get silly. It makes me also think of like what a lot of video games do is create sequels, because like these board games, like just games in general, kind of give you the opportunity to have a sequel, especially like video games. Like you could have a sequel starring the original cast.
Sure.
And so I feel like, even going down the whole like virtual reality route, which I feel like there's a lot of there's less action and more like brain work here. So I actually like the idea of a board game. It's like a Clue, kind of like a Clue style.
I was thinking of some sort of Clue style type of thing. Yeah. So I don't know, like I feel like there's a lot of opportunities to kind of, mine this for some actual real world activations rather than simply rebooting it or remaking it. Just so.
Right, but like so many other movies of the 90s, especially September 1992, it's a movie that has aged well, has picked up, I think, has built a fan base and continues to build a fan base over the years, because people just really like it and they show it to people who haven't, because it eventually will come up and have you seen Sneakers? And it's like, oh, the one with Brad Pitt and
Robert De Niro.
Kevin Bacon, Robert De Niro. No. That's Sleepers. That's
Sleepers. It came out 4 years later.
We don't need to talk about Sleepers. But yeah, people really like that movie, and I think it did fairly well. I think it opened at number one. It made money, but again, it was September, so. But that movie,
Robert Redford is a big draw.
Yeah.
And especially around that time. And I mean, that's kind of how this movie got made. Once Robert Redford signed on, that's when all of the other pieces fell into place.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. And, Robert Redford, I felt like was so perfect for that role, because in most Robert Redford movies, I'll say, with the exception of probably something like, Barefoot in the Park, actually, his characters usually exude this kind of confidence and gravitas that make you feel like you're safe with this character, and that that you're going on this journey with somebody who knows what they're doing. Maybe also less the Sundance Kid, but that's for different reasons. But he still did have the bit of confidence there. But Robert Redford, I mean, I think about him in a lot of his movies, both newer and older, and they're voices of authority. It's, professors and politicians. And
that's why it's so much fun when he doesn't know what to say, like the scene where he runs into where he's in Janek's office, and the scientist that Janek is having the affair with comes into the room, and Redford's Whistler's trying to feed him lines, and that's why it's fun when you see him kind of stumble. But before we sign off here, I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, is this my favorite Redford? Is this like my favorite Robert Redford performance?
Well, okay, we've covered 3 Days of the Condor before. I mean, how do you feel like it compares to that? Because I feel like that's a really strong one.
I prefer this.
You prefer this? Have you seen the next movie that we're going to be covering?
I have not.
So Dan, I don't know. I think that you might like that one. And why don't you tell everybody what it is?
Yes. So the next movie we're going to be covering is from 1972. And it is called The Candidate, starring, of course, Robert Redford, directed by Michael Ritchie, who we've talked about before, directed The Bad News Bears, co-starring Peter Boyle, Melvin.
And we talked a little bit about The Candidate on our Bad News Bears episode, but you hadn't seen it, so it was pretty much just me saying how much I like it.
Yes. So I'm excited to see this one. It's one I've been wanting to watch for quite some time, and just kind of always put it off, and now I'm excited to watch it for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's kind of one of those evergreen stories about politicians kind of being used as props, essentially. You know, I don't know. Unfortunately, it's not on any like of the like streaming services, but it is available for rent and to purchase on all the biggies. But it's also just like it's classic 70s Redford. You got Peter Boyle in there. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this when I watched it last, and I'm excited to watch it again.
All right. Sounds good, John.
Well, if you have any thoughts on Sneakers or The Candidate or anything that we've talked about before, feel free to email us. Robert Redford, ruinchildhoodspot@gmail.com. We have a link tree in our bio with all of our social media stuff, so please follow us there. We'd love to hear all your thoughts. And Dan, while you are running away from the fake NSA, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.